Hello, I'm Rico Cavella, and this is your Ageless Body Self-Care Guide, Operations Manual for your body and for your mind. And the topic today we're going to be discussing is spirituality, and how you can awaken to your life's journey. So we're very fortunate to have a great guest today. Her name is Julie Hoyle, and she's a transformational coach, author, artist, and educator. She offers spiritual, intuitive, and healing modalities via her website, juliehoyle.org. She works with creative healthcare and educational leaders and anyone looking for positive, lasting change. And what underpins her success is having had a radical spiritual awakening in 1989. And she is the author of An Awakening Life, A Journey of Transformation, and her new book, Meeting the Shadow, Finding Yourself. So Julie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Rico. It's an absolute honor. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I'm looking forward to this very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming to share your knowledge and wisdom with us. So let's start by, because I think this is kind of spirituality and spiritual living and all these things kind of get thrown out there quite a bit. And I don't think most people have a clear definition of what really means to live spiritually. And so let's see if we can actually come up with a really good definition so people really know what we're talking about. So how would you define spirituality?
Well, I'd love to define it by telling a story. And
Okay, sure.
the story starts when I was 8 years old. And I was watching a National Geographic documentary with my father. And the documentary was detailing yogis. And, they were performing these amazing asanas, these, body contortions and so on, which was fascinating. And then what happened is they took one of the yogis who was quite advanced in age, and they had him sit in a lotus posture. And then they put him in a sort of a glass box that they then sealed. And then they chained, and then they dropped in the deep end of a swimming pool. And I'm saying the guys that were doing the sort of the analysis and the recording and so on and so forth. And so they put these electrodes on his head and on his body, and they were recording his heart rate, his brain activity, what was happening in his muscles and so on and so forth. And they kept him under the water for something like 45 minutes. It was a really long time. And, it was an airless, he was in this airless structure. So then after this time, they lifted him out of the water. They took the lid off, and he just bounced out of there as if nothing had happened. He was as fresh as a daisy, and he just went walking off. So my father turned to me and he said to me, "Do you believe it? Do you believe it's true?" And immediately, without any thought, I didn't have to analyze anything. I just knew. I said, "Yes, it's true. I know it's true." And what happened is there was this rise of energy from inside, this resonance, this absolute recognition that what I was seeing and hearing and intuiting was absolutely true. It was truth itself. And, it took me many years to recognize and to see that this recognition, this rising up of recognition from beyond the mind is the truth of our true nature. It's our true nature itself. And when we have this resonance or this recognition with truth, either, we might be reading something or seeing something or hearing something, but there's this rising up of energy, this absolute recognition that what we're hearing and seeing is truth itself. And that recognition from beyond the mind is how I would define spirituality, which is nothing to do with religiosity at all. It's about self-recognition that is timeless, and that it's really seen and felt, throughout our body. We feel it in the heart, and this rising up and absolute recognition that is really absolutely recognizable for all of us. And I'm absolutely certain that every single person that is tuning in and engaged in listening to this has had the direct experience of that kind of resonance and recognition. And it's true for everyone. And it begins in early childhood, and it follows us all through our life. But the question really is always about, do we honor what we're hearing and feeling inside? And do we live from that place of self recognition? And I say self with a capital S, the higher self.
Okay, so you say by self recognition and self, that's recognizing that we are all eternal spiritual beings. That's what all our great teachers and masters have been here on the earth. Said that we're all spiritual beings. We're part of God. We're part of the Creator. And I think most people, no matter what kind of religion or faith they may have, they still believe in some kind of a hereafter, and they believe in a God. Pretty much most people believe in some sort of spirit or creative force. So spirituality means just really is getting connected to your higher self, which is your spiritual self. And would you say that the way that yogi was able to accomplish that was because he was able to really sort of disconnect from his physical body and just be in his spiritual state where those things don't have any control over you, right?
Yes, that's my understanding of the way that works. And funnily enough, and I'm just remembering this as we're speaking, I've been a lucid dreamer since I came into the world. And I had a radical spiritual awakening, in 1989, and called Shaktipat, which I can speak about, if you want. But anyway, so I had this radical spiritual awakening, and then I started to have profound lucid dreams with great beings from diverse paths, faiths, and traditions. One of whom was His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I'd never studied anything about Buddhism at all. I didn't know anything about Buddhism. But of course, I recognized His Holiness because I'd seen him on the television and so on and so forth. And so in this lucid dream, I woke up to lucidity, said, this is a dream and I'm dreaming. And I found myself floating through the air. And then I landed at the side of a swimming pool, and His Holiness was there. And he said to me, I'm going to teach you profound ways to meditate.
Wow.
Now, I'd been a meditator for a while, and I kind of knew the basics about how to sit and repeat mantras and so on and so forth. But he was very playful. And of course I said, yes, okay, let's go. So he just jumped into, and it's funny that I'm started telling the story about a swimming pool because, this is just coming to my memory again. So he jumped into the deep end of this swimming pool. I followed suit, and we sat there. And without saying a word, obviously, because we're underwater, he was teaching me how to stay in a deep state of meditation on just one breath.
Wow.
And so what he taught me was to bypass the kind of the physical connection and the need for breathing, and to go into the subtle body and to stay in that place. And we stayed there for quite a while. And then when it was all over, he hopped up, I came up, and then I was pulled back to waking, and I woke up. And honestly, that teaching completely and profoundly changed the way I meditate. And it's kind of organic now, because when I go and sit and meditate, I often go into that place where I don't feel like I've been breathing. And, and I go into these profound states of awareness. So I know it's possible.
Yeah.
I know that's possible because I've had the direct experience of that. And I know that those kinds of practices as well, you'll find them in the Tibetan traditions too, where,
That's quite a story. That's quite a story. And I know, you're surely not the only one. A lot of people have had experiences like that. So we know that it's a possibility, and it's true, and that we all have the possibility of having those kind of experiences. And that's what learning to meditate is all about. Well, let's talk a little bit about well, your book is called An Awakened Life, A Journey of Transformation. So how would you define an awakened life?
Well, it's really about being in alignment with the truth of who you are, beyond your descriptors, beyond the story. So again, it's connecting in with source, if you like, or the supreme self, or absolute awareness itself, or whatever you want to call that. And the way I would kind of give a kind of a direct experience of that through story again is by referencing you and your own story with respect to what you're doing now. Because I would guess, since you have created this, amazing platform and through everything you're doing and all of that, that idea, I'm sure, landed in you either during meditation or during quiet time, or it just kind of grew in you, landed in you, grew in you, and you were called into action with one first step. It's not that you maybe saw the full picture, but being in alignment and aligning with one's spiritual nature is having the courage to take the first step into action when you're called into action, whatever that action looks like, whether it's writing a book, creating a blog or a website or a new program to support people's health. Whatever that looks like, it's trusting the place from which this guidance arises, saying thank you, and then knowing that you'll be supported and everything that you need will be given in some way or shape or form.
Yeah, very well said. I would just add that I think we're all here with a divine purpose, and so living an awakening life would be discovering our divine purpose and like you say, actually taking action on it. Yeah.
Yes.
Really,
Yes.
really well said. Well, so why do you think that so many people actually struggle with this? And then there's so many non-believers and people who don't really believe, maybe, or they don't know if there's really such a thing as a spiritual life. And so why do you think so many people have a trouble connecting to their spiritual self or living an awakening life?
I think a lot of that has to do with conditioning, and maybe being forced to go to churches or synagogues or places of worship that don't resonate, and feeling like certain teachings don't resonate. So again, it's the sort of the religiosity and the structure of maybe some of those faiths and beliefs. And then a lot of it too is about not really trusting one's own innate wisdom and guidance. And I think, was it Albert Einstein that said something along the lines of, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. And what's happened is, rather than, honoring the gift, we honor the servant, and we trust that more than what we feel intuitively. And especially in the West, I think what's happened is the mind has been put on a pedestal, and we've been taught to believe, actually, that, we can figure everything out with the mind. And, and the evidence of that is that we actually know that that's not true. And again, I would invite everybody who is listening to be their own proof, because we've all had problems in our lives or questions in our lives that we struggled with. Should I do this? Should I do that? Sometimes you call up 2 or 3 different people to get their opinion. You might do a for's and against list. You might be, having sleepless nights. You're trying to figure it out and analyze everything to death, and you can just wear yourself out. And it's the moment you drop that, right? Maybe you go for a run and you go into that zone where you go beyond the mind and everything just settles, or you meditate, or you go look at the ocean or the sky, and there's a stepping outside and away from the mind.
Yeah.
That the answer just comes on its own. It reveals itself within our very own being, and then it becomes obvious.
I think Einstein also said that imagination is more important than knowledge, right?
Yes.
And so,
yes.
and again, just to add what you said, I think that we're so indoctrinated into different religions and beliefs that, that we need to follow these rules, and we got to listen to all this, the people in these churches and all this stuff, and we need all that stuff. But not to say that they don't have some value,
Yes.
but really, that's not what we need. There's a great saying, I'm sure you've heard this saying too, that I always remember, is that one can travel the world searching for the meaning of life and return home and just sit quietly and know yourself for the first time. Isn't that so cool?
Yes, and that it's the absolute truth. It really is. And as you said, there's nothing wrong. I mean, there's great beauty in the great faiths and traditions of this world. And
Right.
essentially, if you kind of boil it all down, they're all saying the same thing,
Right.
which is to trust your own higher self and to know that God is within you, or source, or whatever you want to call that, the mystery, if you like, of that which cannot be defined. And it's really about that. It's about trusting that and living from that space, and also being comfortable with the not known, or the not knowing, because again, I'm sure there were many stages and phases where you really didn't know what to do next in terms of constructing whatever you were constructing. But there's this space that we can create to invite the not knowing in, and to trust that what we need will be given at the right time. And that has proven itself again and again in my own life, when I've been inner directed to create something or do something, and I really oftentimes don't have a clue. And so I'll just kind of pray for guidance, or I'll just create space, and then somehow that knowing is given. And even if it's just the first step, I just take the first step and then go from there.
And I think the important point here is that everybody can do that. Everybody has that capacity if we just take the time and trust, like you said, trust in yourself and trust in knowing that God inside, that you have your creator. It is kind of funny that most people, especially Christians, and they all believe that they were created by God. And so if you would just realize that, well, if God's all loving and all knowing and the creative force, then you're part of that. So you're the same, that you have that capacity to be all loving and all knowing as well. So, and it doesn't always, what always gets me is that the simplest thing of like the golden rule, just treat people as you would be treated. I mean, nobody needs to know anything more than that. And we could have a peaceful, amazing world to live in, right? I mean, it's just so simple, and it's just like, sometimes it's just mind blowing that why more people just can't realize that and realize how much better it would be for all of us if we would just do that, just treat everybody as a brother and sister, So anyway,
Yes. Yes.
anyway, well, we're getting there. It's a little slow, but we're working our way there, I think. Anyway,
Yes.
so
It's happening.
it's happening, yeah. Well, I'd like to always remind people that, if you watch the nightly news, you're going to be, I like to say, if you live with the news, you live with the blues, so that's not, those are some things that are happening, yes, but I can promise you there's way more good things happening, and we're moving forward, and so many people are doing so many great things, but it's not on the mainstream news. So you just got to disconnect from that a little bit and get tuned into what's really going on, and get out there and make a difference yourself. So just a
Yes.
little bit, real briefly, your new book is about meeting the shadow and finding yourself. So what can you tell us, what do you mean by that, by finding yourself?
Well, first of all, let me reference Meeting the Shadow in case anybody listening doesn't really understand what that is. But, the shadow is the dark side of our personality or our psyche that we do not want to own, we've repressed or turned away from because we think it's unpalatable, or people won't like us if they knew this about us or that about us, And a lot of times, that repressed energy also contains our creative gifts. And so it's really important, especially if we want to live an aligned life, a life of truth and authenticity, we really have to meet and greet all those aspects of ourselves that we've tried to turn away from or repress or avoid looking at. So that might include, anger, irritation, feelings of disappointment, self-hatred even. So once you start having a conversation with that and bringing that energy back home, essentially, you're then able to really live from a space of authenticity because you've met the darkness, and you're also familiar with the light. So there's a meeting point. What the yogis call the meeting point between the light and the dark is the place of integrity and the place of wholeness and truth. So, in that meeting point, coming into that meeting point is about finding the self with a capital S, because you cannot live from the highest self and stay there if there's a part or parts of you that you've pushed away. So shadow work is really integral to meeting one's higher self or source and staying there. Because prior to that, what happens is we may sit and meditate for 2 hours or 3 hours or something, have divine experiences and all of those things, which are beautiful and wonderful, and they have value. But if we've still repressed our shadow elements, if we haven't really owned them, then even if we have amazing experiences, we won't be able to stay in the joy and the bliss of that, because we'll keep being pulled back through our subconscious patterns and behaviors that may be telling us, you don't know anything, or who do you think you are, and those kinds of maybe stories that are in the shadow. So that's why it's really important to do the work on meeting and greeting the shadows, so that you can live an authentic, fully engaged life, and also really have the courage to speak from truth, rather than always trying to be nice, so that you can maybe present well. So all of these things are so important, especially if you want to be really in truth, and to live in a way that is really authentic to your true nature.
Yeah, we heard so much about the word transparency these days. So I think the real one is you got to be transparent with yourself. That's the most important.
Yes.
Transparency.
Yes.
That's what I got from what you were saying there. That's really
yes.
good.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And the thing is I've counseled a lot of people over the years who are spiritual seekers, and they've been on a spiritual path for many years. And they do all the practices, they do all the mantras or prayer work or whatever. And yet, oftentimes, they're still afraid to, let's say, change jobs or move location or, create something new, because they haven't dealt with the shadow, and they have not integrated, those old beliefs and ideas that maybe they inherited from their family.
Right.
That say, oh, you shouldn't be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that. So, it's really about having the courage to face the darkness and to have a conversation with it, and to recognize what it's there to teach us, because there are amazing gifts and gems that, in the shadow, if we have the courage to look at it.
Yeah, so it's about facing your fears, and because, as you say, there's something to learn there, and it's also a challenge to learn from that fear and to transcend those fears, and then you move back into love, and that's where we want to be, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I know you talk about honoring your soul contract. So let's talk just a little bit about that, and talk about some spiritual practices that you found to be helpful for learning to honor your soul contract.
Sure. So Honoring Your Soul Contract is an intuitive art course that I was prodded to create. And it's really for people who, are both professional artists and beginners, and people that really don't have a clue. But, inherent in some of the lessons is the little sort of project or task of writing down all the things that your friends and family have come to you for, since, from as far back as you can remember. What do people naturally come to you for? Because inherent in their seeking is a list of your innate gifts, skills, and talents. And it's amazing how many times people just don't recognize or see what they are.
Yeah.
But it's always been obvious, because people will come to you for those things, essentially. So anyway, we do a little bit of that in the course, and then we go through different exercises, and at the end of it, the participants have created a really beautiful, unique painting that includes their gifts, skills, and talents. And inherent in their gifts, skills, and talents is a call to action with respect to their soul purpose.
That's
So
so
you
good.
yeah, so you find your purpose through detailing what you're naturally called to.
That's so good.
And
Is that one of your paintings behind you there?
yes,
That's
yes,
so
it is.
cool. Is that a
Yeah.
watercolor? Is that a watercolor?
Yeah, it's actually watercolor ink. I was just,
Oh,
dropping ink on there and
that's
letting it
cool.
run. And, a lot of what I do is intuitive painting and, with adults as well, to help them bypass the critical faculty, because there tends to be a criticism, especially in adults with respect to art and their art making, because they may not have been successful at school. So this is why I created this course, Honoring Your Soul Contract. So it's really, really about supporting people to articulate and to actually see what their gifts are. And then out of seeing the gifts, to then be able to formulate what is your purpose, or why do you think you came here? If these people are coming to you for all these years for these things, what is it that you're naturally called to? And then, we can see that, and then it just makes it easy with respect to being able to step into it and really own it. Because a lot of times people naturally do these things and respond to their calling, but they don't see it somehow.
Right. Well, I think that's the purpose. That's the challenge of being human beings, of being here. We all have these different challenges, but I think it's so true that we do have a soul contract and we do have a divine purpose. And what I always just like, just real briefly add is that I think, whatever, as you were saying, whatever, first of all, whatever you're good at, and also, you're good at, and other people tell you that, and it's something that you enjoy and that it serves other people, then that's how you find your purpose. And then you just got to take action on it. All right.
Yes.
So just so much good stuff, Julie. I appreciate it so much. But so the last question I have for you, and this is the hardest question that I ask all the experts on this project. It's the hardest one, kind of hard to answer. But so I like to always say, knowledge without action is useless, right? So
Yes.
so what recommendations do you have for people to actually, or what how ideas you have to inspire and motivate people to actually start to take action on some of your recommendations and begin to work on connecting to their higher self?
Well, the starting point is always about valuing the time and space to be able to connect in. And that, meditation is great, but if let's say you're a working mom or a single mom with 3 kids, let's say, it might not be possible to have, let's say, a formal meditation practice in the morning. But there are a gazillion ways to meditate. It doesn't have to be formal. It could be just going out, looking up at the sky and connecting in with a feeling of expansion, or going in the garden, doing some gardening, planting some seeds, or it could be in the kitchen chopping vegetables or something. But it's really about paying attention to those times and those moments where you connect in there's usually a touchstone, which many of us have felt in nature, and you feel expanded and expansive, and it's just this great feeling. So it's really noticing one of those touchstones and then utilizing those to connect in to source itself, or silence, or quietude, or peace, or whatever you want to call it. Because then when you create that, then there's much more of an opportunity for the divine guidance or source guidance to come in and give us a directive. Because it's really it's the energy of that comes through, that spurs us into action. Because there's a profundity and there's an energy when that comes in. We can feel it, and certainly I absolutely trust it, and I'm sure you do, otherwise you wouldn't have done what you've done.
Yeah.
And that everything will be taken care of. So it's really about creating space for those moments of connecting in, whatever that looks like for each and every person.
Yeah, very well said. I think that really comes up. Just got to create space. We're all connected to our higher self if we just allow and get rid of the resistance and be open to it, be attentive. Like you say, it's when those touchstones come, and then you'll be on your way. So it's just, so the message here is, you're an important, valuable, loving, wonderful human being, and you're here for a purpose, and we need you to
Yes.
that's actually what this project's all about, right? we're trying to
Yes.
help people to be healthier and more energetic and waking up both mentally, and physically, so that you can be your best self and make a bigger difference in the world, because we have a lot of major challenges to overcome as humanity. So we need everybody to be available to use their knowledge and wisdom and talents to help and make a difference. And we need more people to be mentors and role models for our younger people. So that's what this project's all about. So Julie, that was so good. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us.
Thank you. It was an absolute joy. Thank you so much. And thank you for all you're doing as well. It's really amazing.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So that's it. And I just want to remind you that uh, to all of our viewers that your whole package comes with a PDF. It has a transcription of what we just talked about, and then it has all the contact information for Julie and for all of our experts. So we definitely recommend that you stay connected to them. They go to their websites. They have lots of free information. A lot of them have gifts to give you. They have really great offers. So we really encourage you to stay connected and get some more help and teaching if that's what you need. So thanks very much for watching.